Alright, this is number 9. Number 9 in your program exercise. It basically asks you to redo the program exercise number 8, converting all those while loops to a for loop. Now, if you think about what I just shared with you, with all the for loops with it, and I'm gonna talk about this part. Let's grab. It comes down to is part B basically with it. There's nothing to do part A. There's no while loops in this thing. You're just reading in, prompting the user and reading in with it. It's part B where you have this. And when you look at this part right here for me, all right. This is number 8, part B. And you look at this in your for loop. Let me just document some of our discussions on here. So if you look at the for loop, I'm going to give you the syntax for the for loop. I'm going to bulk comment this thing so we don't have any errors if you do this. Make sure you. So inside of this, okay, so look at the structure of the syntax of a for loop. You have your for loop. The first thing is you have your initialization statement separated by a colon. This is the syntax. You test your loop control variable separated by another semicolon, and then your last one is your update statement. Sound familiar? And everything that happens in here goes like this. So you have this. In your while structure, what do you have? You have your initialization. Let me write the initialization here. Your initialize, okay, statement. And then you have your while loop. You're testing out the loop control variable here. And then you got your curly brackets. Same thing, but more important here, you need to update the loop control variable. Okay? Loop control variable. Key things to point out in here. Whatever you have here is your initialization. Alright, this is your initialization statement in this thing. That from a while, that will go here. Whatever you have in your testing out your loop test expression, okay, that's your test expression here. That test expression in the for loop goes here. You update your loop control variable in your test expression, that goes here. So this is a post update. You kind of think about it. Initialize, you do all of this thing, test it, and then when it falls out in the loop, you do your initial state, you test it, you enter the loop when it's true, and then you update it. This is equivalent to this. Cool? That's the last thing that you do. Both of these are for loops with it, and you have to use it the way how I share with you with it. So based off what I just shared with you, now look at the structure. I want you to look at the structure. Look at the structure. I share with you that your for loop, okay, that you have here is assigned to some sort of counter, right? And you have your counter in this thing. And then when you run your loop in this thing, you would actually assign it to counter, and you got to compare it to counter in this thing. So what is this? This is the second number it's being tested here, right? So when you do your for loop, think about how you assign this second number right here. Okay, you can't use count this right here. This cannot be equivalent to this statement in this while loop cannot go here. You have to allocate another piece of memory. That is what I'm trying to say, right? You're going to leave, in this case, this structure right here. I want to take this structure right here. Let me show you how to do one of them. You got to have some sort of another memory allocation with this thing. I want to give things like start. Okay, so you need to compare the start. Have something compared to that start. You can't compare counter with the second number. You can't do that because if you look at it, you're going to actually compare the number, the counter, has to be less than or equal to what? The start. Okay. And your start that you're actually going to start, you're going to test this thing, your test expression is this. So your initialization comes out of this statement right here. So it has to, this in here, when you actually do this in your part B for the for loop with this thing. Let me take this thing. I'm going inside of this thing. So what I would do is I would take this. Instead of saying counter, this would be start here, and this would be start here. Okay, and this is how you do your initialization to figure out if it's an odd or an even number first. Inside of this thing, you would actually do counter is still compared to or equal to your second number. Correct? And then, what is your update statement here is counter is being added to, this is your updating your loop control variable. Inside of this, what are you going to do? You're going to output the counter that goes here. Okay, so that gives you a sense that I took part B and how I converted a while loop to a for loop in this thing. Okay, this is part B. Alright, so you got to be careful in how you initialize it and how this counter right here is less than or equal to your start, and your counter is less than or equal to your second number in this thing. Okay. So go through this. I'm not going to do part C for you. Part C is pretty much the same way with this. Very similar to part B. You have to have a, you gotta give this another variable start, and you're gonna have to compare that to the first one with it. Take a look at part D. And when you come down here, part C is the same thing. Again, you have to change these things to start, and then you do the for loop exactly how I showed it to you. But look at part D. Look at part D. How is part D different in this thing? This is equivalent to your initialization right here. Counter equals 1. This is your test expression inside your for loop. You're going to tell it to do this in your for loop, and then you're going to update, put this statement or this statement inside your third parameter of your for loop. Okay, your last parameter here. So that's E with it. Okay, so on with it. So that's pretty much with it. Change your while loop as well. Part E with it. So it's pretty straightforward. I can't say much about the part F. It's pretty much straightforward. Take this part, your initialization, your test expression, and you're updating it. Okay, inside your for loop, structure looks like this. Cool. All right.